Hello and welcome to New Filmmakers Los Angeles in partnership with NewFilmmakers magazine. My name is Danny DeLillo. We're here at the South Park Center and I'm delighted to be reunited with Pearl, who's come back for the second time with us at New Filmmakers LA with her fantastic movie, Castles in the Sky. Let's take a look at the clip.
When you lose faith in the way you conceived yourself and how you could live and how you could love, how do people have sex? When they talk about animals, they're talking about themselves. They can't handle the sex, the sexuality, and the intention to provide and derive pleasure from flesh.
From the very first moment you see menstrual blood, that's when you'll be using this. This is a Badika cloth.
Pearl, I'm so happy you're back. Welcome back.
I love being here.
I love having you here, and this is so special. And I know I said this last time, but thank you so much for bringing your film. I'm still thinking about it. It's amazing. But for those that haven't seen it, tell us a brief synopsis.
Sure. First, I just want to say thank you for having me back.
We love it.
Last time with the film, The Turnout, which actually won Best of the Fest.
It did.
For the year.
Yes, it did.
That blew me away because I know your lineup, which is incredible. And I just want to say, like, for people who don't know what's happening behind this camera right now, we're surrounded by high school students, we're surrounded by college students locally. What you do for the culture of filmmaking and staying, on the edge of what's happening and staying current, because it's our young generation who's going to tell us what's happening in filmmaking next. I just want to commend you, and I just want to thank you for doing this, and I want to thank you for honoring filmmakers by taking the time, partnering with Movie Maker, and then having this conversation with us, because that really means a lot to us. So I just want to say thank you.
Well, I'm crying with happiness, already. We got into the interview, no, really, that means a lot to us, and knowing what you do in your profession and how many students and communities you help, that means a lot coming from you.
And as a first-generation college goer, I mean, no one in my family, until maybe now and maybe online, has gone to college, and even at this age, meaning my age. So I think it's so important to encourage all forms of learning. So. I mean it from the bottom of my heart at 9 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday to see this group of people here, which people can't see because they're behind the camera, though for those who need the photos to show it for the article or whatever, we have it. So,
thank you,
and I'm happy to take another one. But
thank you.
Like
we love our team.
Right now. From this view, it's truly incredible. I know you can cut, so it's not live.
It's
but this is truly, it warms my heart to see this level of engagement. You have a CBS cinematographer working with a hopeful university student trying to get into USC, the person who's working at CBS, right?
Yeah.
The person that's working at CBS went to USC. I mean, this is not something that you can create without really caring.
Well, for our viewers, we have not paid Pearl a penny, I promise you.
No, and not only have you not paid me, I know that it's ongoing, because the last time I was here was 2018, and it's 2024.
And here we are.
You mean it.
We are.
And you do this monthly, which is blowing my mind.
We can't do it without you, and we can't do it without the great content and the storytellers. And
right, it works both ways.
It works both ways, but no, it really means a lot, and we are a family here.
Right, but encouraging people to believe that their story is worth telling. Is what you need in order to then give back and create a platform for that conversation, which you did last night, which was incredible.
Well, I'm still thinking about your film. I've got so many questions, but there are some people in our audience may not have seen your film yet, so just tell us a brief synopsis of Castles in the Sky.
Yeah, Castles in the Sky is a film that I put aside to do a little bit later in my career. It is about a sex ed teacher in her 80s who has been living a double life, and who has chosen faith over certain passions that she has, which is not the typical story that we see, and it's certainly not at that age. It's nice to see someone in their 80s feeling sexual and craving erotic poetry and conversation, integration with other generations, and I just wanted to play that out a little bit.
That was amazing.
Thank you. And it's a film that brought together my love for documentary and also fiction with The Turnout, which you showed here. It literally was a hybrid film. So it was about sex trafficking at truck stops, and survivors of trafficking and truckers were in the film playing out a fictionalized narrative that I wrote based on their stories that they so generously shared. And then they agreed to be in the film. So there's almost no actors in that. Wow. In this one, we actually, and was intentional, we worked with seasoned actors as well as maybe first or second time actors, but actors who want to be actors, who had a real, I don't want to say real, it's the wrong word, who had an authentic connection to the material and also helped drive the material. I didn't write this alone, just like I didn't write the turnout alone. You know, sure, I had the beats, but the poetry's not mine.
No, and the poetry is real, and I think
Poetry's real.
That's what's so fascinating about it. I mean, you as I say, you chose. It's sometimes interesting when you've got an idea, and then you kind of know the perfect time when you want to release that idea.
Yeah.
And in this case, it was later on.
A little bit
later on. But like, where was for you personally? Where was that inspiration for you to take this wonderful story and turn it into a film? Where did that inspiration kind of come from?
So it's a multi-part answer. And feel free to cut out, if you need to shorten it, whatever. But I'm going to give you all of it.
Yeah.
And then you just go ahead and cut, which is, sorry, editors, but here we go.
We love you.
I'll try and breathe between sentences. But I should say that when I was probably about 15 or 16, I had a very close connection with my great aunt Malka, who is an incredibly, incredibly religious woman. But she would do things like read the New York Times, which one would think isn't a big deal. But in the Hasidic community where I was raised, it's a very insular community because of that fear of extinction that drives you, and the sense of, a lot of us come from religious backgrounds, so we understand how important it is from a soulful perspective, especially for parents, that they don't mess it up with their kids. Like, God forbid, as it were, literally, your kids should go off the path, whatever that is, Christianity, Islam, whatever it is. Even, being agnostic is a form of faith or religion, for lack of a better term. So you worry about your kids, right? And you worry about the next generation. So that was very dominant in my upbringing. And my great aunt, who's a survivor of the Holocaust, couldn't have kids because of the Holocaust, I think. She never really got into the details for a number of reasons. And being a single woman in a community where raising kids is so important, where having the next generation be, vibrant is important. She didn't have that. She had us. So I was very close with her. And so she was reading the New York Times, which we didn't read. We were reading the internal magazines and the Yiddish ones and, even maybe some English, but not really. And that was back in the 90s, even 80s. I'm not talking about now. Now things are a little bit different. They've shifted. We're in the global village of the internet. Everything's available. But back then it wasn't so much. And I just remember her sitting at her kitchen table, like sipping her black coffee through what we call in Hungarian a kackacuka, which is a sugar cube, and reading her New York Times, and I'm like, who is this magnificent creature? And she just continued to inspire me. So it wasn't until this one that she's in my doc, my first film called Divan, where she warns me not to leave the community. And she tells me, be careful what you look for. And she says to me, do not build castles in the sky, which is a Hungarian poem, which tells you, all those dreams that you put up there, don't build those castles up there, build them on the ground. And you, Pearl, are building castles in the sky. So I knew that was something I wanted to come back to. The second strand was poetry. I kind of shifted or left or whatever the Hasidic community through poetry in a lot of ways.
It's incredible,
I don't even know how it started. And then, knowing that my poetry was truly awful, although I've written a few.
I don't believe that though, Pearl.
They're really meaningful to me. It didn't even make it into the cut of my own film. None of the poets wanted to read it.
That's just you being a critic of yourself, don't worry.
But it was a stepping stone. So that tells you life's a journey. There it is right there. But it made me want to be in the world of poetry and the world of art. And so I started to host poetry slams. I don't know if you know the history, but it stared in the Cantab Lounge in Chicago. It's at the Nuyorican in New York. So there I was at the Nuyorican. Then I was hosting slams and in cafes around New York, bars and cafes around New York. And so I met incredible poets like Everton Sylvester, who's incredible.
He's so good,
Oh my gosh. I mean, he's a classic. And so I knew about that. I knew I wanted to incorporate that. I knew I wanted to talk about that precipice we all stand on for any big decisions we make in our lives, where we have to decide which way am I going. And I wanted to look at what happens if you don't make a decision, and what happens if you don't make one and live in the in-between for 30 years, which is the case with our main character, played by Lynn Cohen. Right. So she lives in this kind of secret world that is perfect balance for her, where she can educate soon-to-be mothers, like Hasidic brides, in the way to have kosher sex. And what I was talking about earlier, like the purity, the importance of the next generation being holy, is kind of on her shoulders. And so she's kind of the ultimate teacher, and yet she has no kids, and everyone in the community knows that. So her proteges kind of become her children. Her brides become her children.
Yeah.
And so what she's educating is one thing. And then she goes and removes the ultimate sign of humility and modesty in the Hasidic community, which is the wig.
Yeah.
And she removes it, and all this gorgeous white hair flows.
Oh, it's
and
beautiful,
it's an amazing moment, and I've
Yeah.
had that in my head for a while.
Yeah.
And I knew it would be Lynn Cohen.
Yeah.
And she enters into this other world where she can express this other part of herself, because we have many parts to ourselves.
Absolutely, it's such a revealing moment. I actually remember the chills I got when I saw it. It was so magnificent, just to kind of, but also
nice to
just to
hear.
see that, you know, we play different. Certain people can play different roles in their lives and still be equally brilliant at both, right?
Absolutely, and she's
Which is
not
wonderful.
alone. It's all of us at every generation. Like, we
Yeah.
think we're not supposed to have, quote unquote, hidden lives.
Yeah.
But I hope this film asks what happens if you try and integrate and intercommunicate,
Yeah.
and no one says it's going to be easy.
No.
And I really wanted this film to look at what happens if, unlike me,
Yeah.
she chooses to stay in.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also really wanted people to know that life continues past what we normally see on screen, which is
Yeah.
people in their 40s, maybe 50s, maybe 60s. But what happens, and that's why I love that you do this, counter-ageism, what happens in your 80s can be just as intense and overwhelming
Yeah.
in terms of life choices, because
Yeah.
you're still living,
Absolutely.
as
I'm-
if you were a teenager.
And I'm grateful that you made a film, about this, beautiful person, this character, this person we all kind of fell in love with watching on screen, because we don't see it from that perspective with
Agreed.
someone who's got grand life experience and really see her full, beautiful, true self.
I actually feel like a lot of us have these Malkas or
Yeah.
Margits in our lives,
Yeah.
and I want to just encourage more and more people
Yeah.
to connect with them.
One of the things that I'm very grateful for. We obviously it's kind of wonderful and sad at the same time. We've seen a lot of films from the Hasidic community over the last few years, almost that it's been sort of trending in a way rather
know.
than informative. And I'm so grateful for the film you made, because I feel like you got us the closest we've ever got to just almost felt like we were in a documentary.
Wow.
And you did such a great job. Like, from your perspective and your experience, like as a director, how did you want to portray it so it really stood out in its true, authentic experience?
That's not only an excellent question, but it's really nice to hear. I've been at this since the late 90s. My first film, Divan, is about a woman, me, leaving the Hasidic community, but not with this level of sensationalism that seems to be what is craved in certain pieces of media.
Yeah.
And I also think that a lot of the trend that we're seeing, it kind of looks at this kind of sea of black hats out there through the men. I mean, this isn't totally earth-shattering for us to discover that it's usually the male main characters
Yeah.
who those stories get told first.
Yep.
Okay, fine. So Shtisel is made. Beautiful, beautiful piece. Netflix, scooped it up, as they should. It's a stunning, nuanced story about a man and his father and their relationship. And then they did another film, Unorthodox, which looks at a woman, and she comes from a world that is just so intensely overbearing and dismissive of her. And I feel like that has not been my experience, and yet there is conflict in my experience. I feel like it's really important to look at nuance without dismissing an entire community.
Totally.
And that's not just true for Hasidism, it's
Yeah.
true for anywhere. And we see what's going on in the world today, and if it isn't going to be individual stories that are nuanced, that's going to move the needle on how we find a way to see each other as human again, instead of what's happening in the world stage right now, I don't know what it will be. It's
Yeah.
going to have to be these stories.
Yeah.
And so my commitment and my hope with this particular project is to have a story that's female-driven, not just because, let's do a female-driven, but it's because they're the ones birthing the next generation, for now anyway.
Absolutely.
They're the ones who are educating
Yeah.
initially. And it is okay to show conflict and not dismiss the world in which they live, which is like the story of most of my sister-in-laws, my nieces. My niece owns 2 businesses.
Yeah.
You know, they're all on Instagram now. You know, I kind of call it the Hasidic Kardashians, and I mean that in a positive way. But they're fabulous, some of them. I mean, obviously there's struggle everywhere. But not all of them are, you know, in a place, and I'm not saying this doesn't happen, but in a place of abuse, in a place of utter dismissal, in a place of being, you know, dominated by the patriarchy. And I'm not saying it's not patriarchal.
Yeah.
So watching these women navigate a patriarchy, which is a system that they love so much to be in, not because it's patriarchal, but because of everything else, and then finding their power and strength. I think that's the story that needs to be told, because I think that could be super inspirational, because I think even men, not just women, can find their own power in that story, because if they don't fit the narrative, how do I navigate?
100%.
Well, watch these women that I'd like to write, you know, that I've already written and that I want to continue writing. So the intention is to take this film, Where is Joel Baum, which is the first one I did in 2012, and Summer, which I did in 2018, that looks at these different women's stories. One's an LGBT story that takes place in a summer camp. One's about a murder of a Polish cleaning lady. And then this one, and look at the possibility of crafting an ongoing television series or drama.
I'm loving this,
Yeah, it's like a mix of comedy. It's just juicy and it's about life, but it isn't about like, let's leave everything behind. What if we stay, but on our own terms? How does that look? So that's that. But you also asked me about my directing approach, which also leads back to the other strand of inspiration. So we've met my aunt. We know why I'm doing it. We know about me leaving and going to college. You know that story. Well, here's a new generation of people who have also left, and I start meeting them. And I meet a poet, her name is Esther Hoffman, whose poetry actually is partially the poetry you hear Lynn reading. She herself literally left through poetry. Now she has an MFA from NYU in poetry. She's absolutely stunning writer. And you see her for a quick second in the film. She has her little cameo, but it's really what pushed me completely over the edge to commit to doing it. The second person that pushed me completely over the edge to doing it is Malky Goldman. Actually, there are 2 of them, Malky Goldman and Melissa Weiss, both of whom are, one is the bride, and the other is her protege. They too were raised Hasidish. They were both already acting, and they both were married in the system. I was not. So they went to a sex ed teacher.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of the, like that scene between, you know, on like how it doesn't go in, that scene didn't happen to me, but it happened to Malky, who's in the scene.
Wow.
And Loser Torsky, who's beside her as her husband, has also been in a number of films, like Felix and Myra. He was in my first film, my first fiction, Where's Joel Baum. He's played with Lynn in a couple of films, and he's incredible.
You always mix this with like an essence of reality as well,
exactly.
which I love.
So
love
just
that.
blending it together.
That's why it felt so real as well.
And that answers your question. So
but
between my story, my great aunt's story, a little touch of the history, the importance of looking ahead and seeing how we can connect so we can start building more bridges by looking deeply and specifically in, and I'm talking about all communities, not just mine or ours or whatever. I think that's the answer to your question. That was my approach. And I said this last night, creating a platform for everyone to truly just be in their own skin, as it were, and their own realities and their own authenticities, and still staying true to the script, obviously. Like there was a lot of free associating that was going on in that sex ed session, which is why it's so funny.
And it's a wonderful probably to direct as well, absolutely. Thank you for being so warm to, you know, the next generation of filmmakers, whether they start filming at 80
we'd be
or
gone without
15.
them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we need them.
But you know, you can always start a career in filmmaking. It's never too late to start.
You said there was a 90-year-old that you had in your...
We had a 90-year-old
See, I love
filmmaker
that. That fits right
5
into...
years ago.
Yes, I love that.
First film, taught herself Final Cut Pro. Love it.
So maybe Netflix will pick up my series when I'm 90.
I'm
in.
I'm ready for it. You know you have the same amount of energy.
I do.
Too.
I want to say something about Venus Thrash, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
and then,
of
course, y'all can, cut this out. The third and final, because we talked about my story, we talked about meeting other people who've left the community. The third and final, I think, brick that finalized the wall of let's do this, let's go with it, even though it's kind of an odd story and it's interwoven with poetry and with kind of experimental underwater, the mikvah footage and so on, was meeting Venus Thrash. So Venus, who has since passed, her impact in her poetry and local Washington, D.C. community was already clear to me, like I already knew who she was. Mm-hmm. But I met her and I read her poetry, and she has this one poem about it's about Abraham and Isaac. It's about kind of looking at interfaith struggles, and it's told through the struggles of an infertile woman, right, who could not have children, and then there's the miracle where she has a baby, right? I read this poem and I said, oh my God, this is the script. And that was it. She said she's never in a movie before. And I said, you have got to be the matriarch, the counter matriarch to Lynn's character. The one who's all loving, all encompassing, but in her world on the stage, where Lynn does it in her world, in the Hasidic world, Venus does it in hers. And I think she took it on. She was incredible.
I think the wonderful thing, and goodness me, we could do a biopic on this film alone with you. You know, it's incredible.
Well, hopefully, we'll be doing a series.
We're putting out to universe right now. Okay, everybody. But I just want to commend you on firstly bringing this story together, but also, you know, as you showed in the credits, you know, several amazing of your performers and people passed away. And I just want to say what a tremendous legacy you've made in this film for them to live on forever, where their art, their talent, their characters, their experiences, their human elements they brought to the project. Well done for having a legacy that live on forever. So, you know, but Paul, I can't wait for this series. I can't wait for your next project. I can't wait to have coffee with you and all those things.
I can't wait to be back.
I can't wait to be back. But thank you so much, Paul, for Castles in the Sky, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you.